Good morning, this is Dick Zondag, the garden doctor, and this morning we're going to talk a little bit about roses. First off, what I want to do is show you the difference between an own root rose and a grafted rose, because it does make a difference in how deep you plant them. And then we'll also have a potted rose, and we'll show you how to take care of that potted rose also. So first off, I want to show you what a grafted rose looks like. Grafted rose starts out with a rootstock, and from this graft union where you have that outcropping of branches from the graft union down is a rootstock, and that rootstock is not very floriferous, it's just very hardy. And what they do is they graft a bud onto the rootstock, and then they cut the rootstock off right above that bud, and then the bud grows into the rose. And so everything from the bud on up is the rose that you desire. For instance, this one is Dick Clark, which is a pretty hybrid tea rose. And from here on down is the rootstock. And so in our uncovering roses, we'll see how we have to protect this graft union, because if the graft union is not protected and the rose dies back to the graft union, you have just the old ditch bank rose. And I have an example in on the other side of the sidewalk where the top died, and what it looks like when you just have the rootstock. So first thing you want to remember is that you want to plant that rose probably no deeper than an inch below the top root system, top of the root system. You only want to plant the rose with the roots going out. So if the roots are too long, you either have to dig the hole bigger or you have to prune the rose back. And it does not hurt the rose to prune it back, because the roots are very vigorous. In fact, it sometimes stimulates them to grow. So what do? The rose comes in the mail, or you buy it from the garden center, and it's got no dirt on it. So the first thing you have to do is soak it overnight or for 24 hours in a pail of water, which is where I took the rose from. And then you examine the root system and you make sure that there are no broken roots, because you want to remove those, and that all of the roots will fit in the hole that you dug. Now, I dug a hole, looks like it's a little smaller than we need, so it doesn't hurt the rose at all to do a little bit of root pruning. So we're going to take a little bit of the roots off, and that way the roots keep growing out. Okay, so we have the root, the rose ready to plant. So the rose has been soaked in water with root stimulator in it. We have the hole dug deep enough for the rose. Now, my soil here is very, very fertile because I've been adding compost to it. But if your soil is clay, or if your soil is black dirt, but it doesn't have a lot of organic matter, you want to add anywhere from a quarter to a third peat moss or compost to it, because that adds to the texture and the water holding capacity and the nutrient holding capacity of the soil. So when you put the soil back around the root system, it will give your rose plenty of nutrients to start growing. So let's plant this rose. Well, as the top. So we're going to fill the hole about 2/3 full, and you can see that the top of the root system is about an inch below ground. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take some of the water that we soaked the rose in and pour it in the hole. And that will, you can see bubbles coming up, that will take the air pockets that were left around the root system. It'll take those air pockets out. So now we're going to take the soil and put the rest of the soil around the plant. And because it's a bare root plant, the roots are not active. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take soil and put soil a few inches around the canes so that those canes don't dry out while the root system is establishing. Okay, so we have that rose planted. And in about a week to 10 days, we'll come back and uncover it and we'll see what it looks like. So now that's the grafted rose. Now what we're going to do is plant the own root rose. Now, the difference between the grafted rose and the own root rose is that the rose that's called an own root rose, kind of self-explanatory. It's on its own root. What they do is they take cuttings from a rose and they root the cutting, and then they plant it out in the field and grow it, and there's no graft union on this rose because it's on its own root. And they do that with a lot of the shrub roses, especially because they're very hardy. Part of the reason that they use rootstocks for the hybrid teas and the others is that the own roots are sometimes not as hardy as the rose that they're grafted on. But with the shrub roses, like double knockout and some of the others, they're very hardy on their own roots. And so they root the cuttings, they plant them out, and you can see from this rose that there's no graft union on it. And in a lot of the cases, there's a little clump of soil, and that was the soil that that particular rose was rooted in. So you can see the pot that it was rooted in, actually. And so this particular rose is white Magdalen. And what you want to do is the same thing as the grafted rose. You want to have about an inch of soil over the top, where the top roots come out of the plant. So we can see that that is right about ground level. And again, I did not amend this soil because it's pretty good soil the way it is. But if you've got poor soil, you can add at least 1/3 to 1/2 peat or compost. With clay soils, you have to have some compost, but you also have to use some of the native soil too, because if you don't, what you're doing is creating a pot in the ground. So we're going to fill this about 2/3 of the way up. And then put water in the hole to remove any of the air pockets that are around the root system. Plus, we're going to mound up around the stems so that they don't dry out while the roots are establishing, taking up water. Okay, the next one is one that you would probably get in a garden center, and that would be a rose that has been forced in a overwintering house. And you can see this particular rose, which is de Clark, was planted about a month ago, and you can see the graft union is right here, just above the soil line. And so it's ready to put in the hole without doing a lot of special things to it. One of the things that you have to want to do is you want to be careful when you take it out of the pot, because you can see the white roots that have come out of the dormant roots, and so it's active already. And so the the height at which the soil was is the height that you want to plant that at. So in this case, I'm going to put a little bit of the soil back. And you don't have to do a lot with the root system because it was only potted about a month ago, and so you don't have any problems with the plant being root bound. If the rose was grown in that pot, then you would have to make sure that if there are any roots that are going around the plant, that you would cut them or somehow get them out of that root bound situation. Okay, so the soil is put around that root ball, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with the other two, in that we're going to put some water around the outside of the plant because the roots are active, taking up water now, and so this one is ready to go the way it is. Now, roses are heavy feeders, and so I brought along a few products that we recommend that you have in your arsenal for keeping the plants looking good. There are fertilizers, and we have 3 of them there. There's the Neptunes, there's the Rose Tone, and the Algo Plus. All 3 of those are very, very good fertilizers for roses. And then I also brought along the systemic and fertilizer. With most roses, aphids are a real problem, and so what you do with that systemic insecticide is you treat the soil with it probably in another 3 weeks or 4 weeks when the aphids start coming around. And then again, if you see the aphids around the middle of July, you treat it again, and that's all you have to do for aphid and leafhopper control. So we've got the roses planted. The soil we'll remove. We'll maybe come back and show you what they look like when we take the soil away, but it'll be about 10 days to 2 weeks that we'll leave the soil around the dormant plants until they start to grow, and then you remove the soil, and then we'll mulch around them so that it looks nice, and away they go. This is Dick Zondag, the Garden Doctor, and that's how you plant a dormant rose. Good morning. It's been about 2 weeks, and we're going to uncover the rose and see how it looks. So you can see that the soil is up around the canes, and we're going to uncover the canes and see what we have. Oh. Be careful that you don't injure the canes when you're taking the soil away.
Stacy.
You can see that the rose has grown very nicely in the time that it's been covered, and the root system has established now, and so now we want the plant to start out right. So we have our rose food. We're going to measure the right amount of fertilizer to put in the water. Right wing? Wing,
come here.
And we're going to build a little berm around here so that when we water it, that the water goes down into the root system. So here we are at the rose that we planted. This is the grafted rose that we planted about a month and a half ago. We did show you when it was uncovered, and now we fertilized it, and it's off to the races. And the one behind it has a flower on it already. This one has flower buds coming up. So probably in another 3 weeks we'll have blossoms on this. But You know, roses were really, really good this winter. They came out really nice, and you can see from the other roses that are in the front of my house, they really did a nice job of coming back. We pruned them back significantly so that they would start growing from a strong bud, and I don't think I've ever had as nice a roses that overwintered as I had this year. This is Dick Zondag, the Garden Doctor.